Hello everyone. Welcome to another lecture on reasoning ability and problem solving for competitive exams. In today's lecture, we will study analogy and we'll discuss the exercise questions. In the previous lectures, I told you the meaning of analogy, what are the types of questions that comes into exams, the types of examples and other things. So let us give them a quick revision. What do you actually mean by analogy? Analogy is basically comparison between two things in order to draw similarities. This is the by book definition of analogy. So, whenever we deal with analogy for competitive exams, we deal with analogical reasoning, which is we are given two pairs of elements and we have to find the logical relationship between the first pair and answer the question asked for the second pair. In analogy, we covered six types of questions that can be asked. First, semantic, or also known as logical analogy. Then we covered number analogy. Then we covered letter or alphabet analogy. Then we had object or shape analogy. Then we discussed classification, also known as group, also known as category analogy. Lastly, we studied function or also known as role-based analogy. So in previous lectures, we discussed all these six types of analogies. In the last class, we talked about these three analogies in detail. We discussed that semantic logical analogy, we have to find the logic that is used in the first pair, and then we have to use the exact same logic to find the answer. In number analogy, we discussed how to use mathematical operations to find out the answer. So here in number analogy, we dealt with four different operations, that is addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. We also discussed squares of certain number 1 to 30 and also cube of certain numbers 1 to 15. This is how many numbers you should remember for squares and cubes to make it easier for you to solve questions in competitive exams. Along with it, we also discussed letter alphabet analogy. In letter alphabet analogy, we used the same concepts that we learned in alphanumeric series and coding and decoding. So in letter alphabet analogy, we used four concepts. First was forward rank. Then we discussed backward rank. Then we also used the concept of opposite letters, and we also use the concept of loop. So all these four concepts were used in letter alphabet analogy. So this is all that we discussed in the previous lectures. In today's lecture, we will discuss these four types of analogy. That is object shape analogy, classification group category analogy, and function and role analogy. So the first thing that we'll discuss today is object and shape analogy. So whenever we talk about object and shape analogy, there are certain concepts that you should know. The first thing that we discussed were what are 2D figures called and what are their corresponding 3D figures. For example, the first is circle. So the 3D figure for circle is called sphere. Similarly, for square, which is a 2D figure, its corresponding 3D figure is called a cube. So for example, if we have a square, this will be the corresponding 3D figure for it. Similarly, for rectangle, the corresponding 3D figure is called a cuboid. So again, if this is a rectangle, the corresponding 3D figure looks something like this. This is a cuboid. Next, for triangle, which is a 2D figure, its corresponding 3D figure can be either called a prism or it can also be called a pyramid. So this is what we discussed earlier. Then we also discussed if we have certain number of sides, what is the object called? What is the name of the figure, of its corresponding figure? So if a figure has 3 sides, it is called a triangle. Similarly, if a figure has 4 sides, you can call it either a square or a quadrilateral. Then we discussed if a figure has 5 sides, it is called a pentagon. Similarly, if it has 6 sides, it will be called a hexagon. If it has 7 sides, it will be called a heptagon. If it has 8 sides, it will be called a octagon. Similarly, if it has 9 sides, it will be called a nonagon. And if it has 10 sides, it is called a decagon. So all this information we have discussed earlier, and the reason I am repeating them is for you to understand them better and also for you to learn them, because these will come handy when we will solve questions related to object, shape and analogy. So over here in question number 1, circle and sphere, this is the first pair and we have to find the missing element of the second pair. So we used to solve questions of analogy in 2 steps, right? Step 1 was to identify the pattern in first pair, identify the logic used in pair 1, and step 2 was apply the same logic on pair 2. So in these 2 steps, we can solve any question relating to analogies. So let us come in this question. In this question, circle is somehow related to sphere and we have to find out how rectangle will be related to this missing element. So here you can see that circle is a 2D image and sphere is a 3D image. So rectangle is a 2D image and we have to find the corresponding 3D image. So for rectangle, the corresponding 3D image is a cuboid. So answer will be option number 2, cuboid. Then over here, triangle is somehow related to pyramid and we have to find out which missing element will be related to square. So again, triangle is a 2D image, right? And pyramid is a 3D image. Square is again a 2D image. So we have to find the corresponding 3D image. So the corresponding 3D image for square is a cube. So here the answer will be cube. Now, pentagon is somehow related to hexagon and we have to find the similar relationship for heptagon. Now let me write. Pentagon has how many sides? For pentagon, I am writing number of sides. Okay. For pentagon, the number of sides is 5. And for hexagon, the number of sides is 6. So here I can see that we are moving one position forward. That is, if pentagon has 5 sides, we are moving over to an image which has plus 1 side, that is 6 sides. So similarly, we know that heptagon has how many sides? Heptagon has 7 sides. So we have to move forward to a figure which will have plus 1, that is 8 sides. and the figure that has 8 sides is called a octagon. So our answer will be option number 2, octagon. Now, similarly, let us look at this question. Somehow triangle is related to pentagon and we have to find out how square is related to this missing element. So again, let me write the number of sides. How many number of sides are there in a triangle? We have 3. How many number of sides are there in a pentagon? We have 5. So here I can see that we are adding 2 sides to the image. So if a triangle has 3 sides, a pentagon has 5 sides. This is what a pentagon looks like, right? This is a pentagon. So similarly, a square has how many sides? A square has 4 sides. So we have to find a figure which has 2 sides more than square. That is something that has 6 sides. So a figure which has 6 sides is called a hexagon. A hexagon looks something like this. It has 6 sides. So this is what a hexagon looks like. Okay. So our answer will be option number 1, hexagon. Because hexagon has 6 sides and we are moving to a figure which has 2 sides more. So answer you can check here is hexagon. Now, similarly, over here rectangle is related to cuboid and we have to find out how triangle is related to this missing element. So rectangle is a 2D image and its corresponding 3D image is called a cuboid. We have already discussed it. Similarly, for a triangle which is a 2D image, the 3D image is called either a prism or it can also be called a pyramid. So in the options, I can see that only option number 4, prism is there. So our answer will be option number 4, prism. Then again, pentagon, octagon, hexagon, and how is we have to find the next element. So this is the first pair and this is the second pair. So pentagon is somehow related to octagon. So let me write the number of sides. How many number of sides are there in pentagon? 5. I just told you that pentagon looks something like this. How many number of sides are there in an octagon? 8. So we are moving 3 positions forward. We are finding a figure which has 3 more sides than pentagon. Similarly, hexagon has how many sides? Hexagon has 6 sides. So we have to find an image which will have 3 more sides than hexagon, which will have 9 sides. So the figure which has 9 sides is called a nonagon. So our answer will be option number 3, nonagon. So for object and shape analogy questions, it is important to know 2D images and their corresponding 3D images. It is also important to know the name of the figure based on the number of sides. These 2 concepts are very important to know for object shape analogy questions. Now, here you can see that the answer is option number 3, nonagon. Then we have classification analogy. This is also called group analogy and it can also be called category based analogy. In these type of questions, all this forms the first pair of words or the first couple of words and this is the second couple of words, right? So over here, if we look at the first couple of words, I can see that apple is a type of fruit, orange is a type of fruit, and banana is a type of fruit. Similarly, we have to find out potato is a type of what, carrot is a type of what, and spinach is a type of what. So we have grouped or we have categorized apple, orange, banana as fruits. Similarly, we have to categorize potato, carrot, and spinach. So very clearly, I know that potato, carrot, spinach are all what? These are types of vegetables. So our answer will be option number 1, vegetables. Okay. So in this classification analogy, when we talk about, the first set of words represents different types of fruits, and the second set of words, they represent different types of vegetables. So we have grouped them into two parts. This is the first group. Okay. We have classified them into two parts. This is the first classification, and this, if I write vegetables over here, this will be the second group. Okay, so this is how classification analogy works. Now let us look at this. Circle, square, triangle, these are all types of shapes. This is the first one, right? First group. So we have to find out drama, comedy, romance are type of what? So out of the options, I can say that drama, comedy, romance is not a type of flavor, it is not a type of color, and it is not a type of words. So drama, comedy, romance is a type of genre. It could be about movies, it could be about books, it could be about plays, right? But we have thriller movies, we have thriller books, and we have thriller plays as well. But what are these? Drama, comedy, romance, these are all type of genres, right? What are the other types of genres? We can have thrillers, we can have horrors, all these are types of genres. Okay. Now, red, green, blue colors, these are first group. What are these? These are all type of colors, red, green, and blue. Similarly, we have to find out bass, guitar, piano are type of what? This is the second group. So you very clearly you know that guitar, piano, bass are all type of instruments. These are all music instruments. So option number 1 will be our correct answer. Now, dog, cat, horse, animals. This is group 1. Oak, maple, pine. This is group 2. So dog, cat, horse are all types of animals. Similarly, oak, maple, and pine are all types of trees. So our answer will be option number 4, trees. Now, doctor, lawyer, engineer are all professionals. This is group 1 or classification 1, category 1, whatever you want to call it. So doctor, lawyer, engineer are all professionals. So what do we call painters, sculptors, and dancers? So painter, sculptor, dancers, this is group 2. These are all called artists. So our answer will be option number 3, artist. Now, Sun, Polaris, Sirius are all types of what? They are types of stars. They are name of stars. This is group 1. Right? Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. This is group 2. What are these? These are all name of planets. So answer will be option number 4, planets. Do you know all the planets? Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These are all 9 planets. These are all the name of 9 planets. Okay. Function analogy, also known as role analogy. So in function analogy or role analogy, we basically find the function is the logic that is used in the first pair, and we have to use the same functional logic in the second pair. Over here, I can write that a teacher teaches, right? And teacher's word can be substituted with educate. So a teacher educates. Similarly, what is the function of a chef? A chef cooks. So we are using the same function that we used in the first pair. So our answer will be option number 1, cook. So in function analogy or role analogy, we have to find the function in the first pair and then we have to solve the answer for the second pair. Now, what does a doctor do? A doctor heals. This is the pair 1. So a doctor heals its patients. So the function is healing. Similarly, a mechanic repairs vehicles. So the function performed by a mechanic is that he repairs. So answer number 2, that is repair, will be the correct answer. Now, very easy. The function of a writer is to write. So the function of a singer will be to sing. So our answer will be option number 2, sing. So here in the solution, you can see the relationship between the first pair is that writer performs the action of write and we need to identify the action performed by a singer, which is sing. So we are following the same role, the same action. Okay. This is how you solve questions for function analogy. Then over here, a gardener, plant and a carpenter what? So I can say a gardener plant trees. The plant is the action that a gardener does. Similarly, a carpenter builds furniture. So, builds is the action that is performed by the carpenter. So, our answer will be option number 4, build. Now, artist to paint, athlete to walk. So, a artist paints. This is the action that is being performed by artist. So, what action does an athlete perform? So out of all the given 4 options, an athlete can run. This is the action of an athlete. Run is the action of an athlete. So our answer will be option number 4, run. Now, similarly, a driver drive. So what will a pilot do? So drive is the action of a driver. Similarly, we have to find a word which is action of a pilot. Action of a pilot out of all these options will be option number 1, fly. So our answer will be option number 1, fly. So in this lecture, we covered 3 types of questions on analogy. In the previous lecture, we covered other 3 types of questions on analogy. Total there are 6. Number 1 was semantic, or also known as logical analogy. Then we discussed number analogy in detail, right, which deals with various operations performed on numbers. Then we discussed letter or alphabet analogy, right, which deal with alphabets. Then in today's class, we learned about object and shape analogy. So in object and shape analogy, we did questions on 2D, 3D, and also based on number of sites. Then we discussed classification analogy or grouping analogy, in which we learned how to group certain words into a particular category. And then we studied about function, or you can say role analogy or action based analogy, in which the logic that is used is based on the function. So the function of the driver, the function of the pilot. So we discussed all these 6 type of analogies in detail. In the next lecture, we will discuss all the previous year questions that you get from analogies. So this concludes today's lecture. Thank you.